Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, What We Need to Know About the Washington Solar Consumer Protection Act. My name is Chantal Stevens with Solar Washington. Next. A few words about Solar Washington. We are an education and community involvement organization, and our mission is to promote the sustainable development and equitable use of solar energy and its contribution to the economic, environmental, and social fabric of Washington. Next. We are an independent organization, but we couldn't do what we're doing without our sponsors and our members. So we do want to recognize them and thank them a lot for their support. Thank you very much. We want to invite you to get involved and support our vision of 100% clean energy Washington. There's several ways that you can do that. One is to join as a member or sponsor Solar Washington. You can donate to Solar Washington, and we do suggest a $5 donation for this webinar. And finally, you can attend the Solar Summit. Next. Our Solar Summit will be October 4th in Shoreline, Washington. Registration is open, and you can find it by going to our website, solarwa.org, and clicking on 2024 Solar Summit. Next. We are thrilled and honored to have Nora Hawkins as one of our board members and as today's presenter. Nora is a senior energy policy specialist at the Washington State Department of Commerce, where she works on renewable energy and battery energy storage. She has worked on clean energy policy in several states and in the federal government. She is passionate about expanding access to solar and storage and finding new ways to bring the benefits of the clean energy economy to communities through innovative policy, regulations, and program implementation. Nora completed a Master of Environmental Management at the Yale School of the Environment. And now passing on the information to her, I just wanted to say that please enter your question as they come up. There's a question pane where you can enter your questions. If something is urgent, I may interrupt Nora to ask her that question. If not, we will address your questions at the end of the webinar. Nora?
Thank you, Chantal. It's great to be here today. I am very happy to be a board member of Solar Washington, but I'm here today speaking in my capacity, my day job at the Washington State Department of Commerce. Really excited to be here today to talk about Washington's new solar consumer protections law. So just a little bit about commerce. We do a lot of work across a lot of sectors of the economy, and our mission is to strengthen communities. So these are many of the areas that we work in. I work in the energy division, which is featured on the top right. So I wanted to provide some brief framing for this presentation to kind of share with you all what I will be able to cover and what I unfortunately won't be able to cover in this presentation and then the questions and answers. Importantly, Commerce does not have a role in implementing or enforcing the Solar Consumer Protections Law. There are several sections of statute that we'll be talking about today. Commerce is not responsible for enforcing those sections of statute, so I will need to refer you to other agencies in the state for information if you do have questions about some of the nuances here. I also want to importantly flag at the outset that the information I'm sharing today is really intended to provide background and education about what is in the law. This webinar today is really intended for property owners, commercial property owners, residential homeowners who are interested in installing solar on their property and want to understand what the Solar Consumer Protections Law provides for them, what they need to know about the Solar Consumer Protections Law. I do want to emphasize nothing I'm saying today should be construed as an interpretation of the law. I'm just providing background on what the law says. If consumers do have questions about a solar energy installation contract that they are reviewing, that they've received, or that they've already signed, you can contact the Consumer Protection Division in the Attorney General's office. There's some information here on the link to their website and a number you can call with questions. The Consumer Protection Division does work with consumers on contracts that they may have signed if they have questions or issues with those contracts. So would happily refer you to the Attorney General's office. Wanted to provide a little background on where this law came from. And I want to emphasize at the outset that distributed solar will play an important role in our clean energy future. We know that we have a lot of work to do to decarbonize our economy and remove fossil fuel power from our electricity generation, and distributed solar has an important role to play in that space. I also want to emphasize the majority of solar installers in Washington provide factual information and clear proposals. They're working directly with customers to educate them about their options for going solar and really devoted to accelerating the clean energy transition. I've really been excited to get to collaborate with the Washington Solar Energy Industries Association on this law and on questions about the law, and so really grateful for their partnership on all of this work. They were the original folks who kind of put forward a solar consumer protection proposal in 2023 that was part of a larger package that didn't move forward, but we definitely built upon that work that WASIA had done in terms of bringing forward this bill this year and partnered with them on finalizing the language in the bill. The reason that Commerce decided in late 2023 to agency request legislation to put forward a bill proposal for the 2024 legislative session is because we had observed some sales and installation practices that were concerning. So we went to the legislature and said, we have a lot of concerns about this. We know distributed solar has an important role to play in our clean energy future, and we want to ensure that customers have the information they need to make an educated decision about going solar. I also want to note at the outset that one of the primary motivators for me was that Commerce did receive a award under the Environmental Protection Agency's Solar for All proposal. We are going to be implementing that program, funding available likely starting fall of 2025. We just recently received our official award notice, and we're spending this next year doing program planning. So I'm happy to talk with folks more about Solar for All, but that program is really about reducing energy burden for income qualified households throughout the state. And before really expanding access to solar to more vulnerable customers in the state, we wanted to ensure that we had adequate consumer protections in place. Some of the sales tactics we had seen or heard about that we were really concerned about is that solar is now free in Washington state. We were starting to see people messaging around Solar for All when we hadn't even put in our application to the Environmental Protection Agency. And so we really wanted to kind of make sure that we could reduce those problematic practices before implementing Solar for All, and just generally ensure that solar salespeople and solar installers were providing good, accurate information and completing solar installations safely and in a way that they could interconnect to the electric grid. If you're interested in kind of hearing more of the background on where this bill came from, I'd highly recommend going and looking at a recording of the 2023 Solar Summit. So the Solar Summit that happened last year that was put on by Solar Washington. We had a panel on solar consumer protections. I was on that panel with another now current board member, someone from WASIA, and just really appreciated the opportunity to have a conversation with others about why we needed solar consumer protections, which then led to this bill. So diving into the bill now, ESHB is Enrolled Substitute House Bill 2156. So if you're interested in looking at the legislative language, you can go onto the legislature's website and search for 2156 and find the bill language. It was signed into law on March 28th, 2024, and it became effective June 6th of 2024. So just coming up on the 2-month mark of this law being effective. Really wanted to feature this picture here because there was a broad coalition of folks who supported this bill, who collaborated on it and brought it to fruition. In addition to many of my colleagues at the Department of Commerce, the Washington Solar Energy Industries Association, most of our utility companies, our electric utility companies in the state, were wonderful partners in this bill, helping us work on the language, helping us bring on support for the bill, and very grateful to Representative Reeves for sponsoring the House version of the bill, which is what ultimately passed, and Senator Stanford for sponsoring a companion bill to 2156. So very grateful to our legislative partners for the success on this. So what is in the bill? I'm going to go section by section of the bill just to provide kind of what is each part talking about, and what is the substance in each section. Section 1 of the bill, and all of the bills that pass the legislature, are the intent section, and so they describe why is the legislature bringing forward this bill, what is their goal in bringing forward this bill. So you can see information on this slide. This is just a couple excerpts from the intent section, but importantly that solar salespeople and contractors are responsible for accurately representing the financing terms, total cost, and performance of the solar energy equipment to support customers in making an informed decision about whether installing solar on their home or business is economically viable, whether it's a good investment decision for them. And it's the intent of the legislature to establish rules of business practice for solar energy contractors and solar energy salespersons to promote honest and fair dealing with homeowners, other property owners, and leaseholders. So just some framing of what the legislators' goals were, their stated intent in bringing this bill forward. This is just an excerpt of the images of the bill title page. We're really grateful that ultimately this bill passed unanimously through both the House and the Senate, and you can see those votes and the ultimately signing statement by the governor on this page. So section 2, now we're really getting into the substance of the bill. Section 2 is the definition section that defines the terms used in the rest of the bill. I don't have all the definitions here, so there are numerous other terms that I would definitely refer you all to look at in the bill if you have questions about how various terms are defined. But importantly, solar energy contractor and solar energy salesperson, this could mean an individual, it could mean a company or a firm, but this describes the work that those entities do. A solar energy installation contract is an agreement between a solar energy contractor or a salesperson and a customer that will include an agreement to install a residential or commercial solar energy system for a total cost of labor and materials in excess of $1,000. What's really important here is that this is about behind the meter solar energy installations. So this is not about utility scale projects. It's about homeowners, property owners, commercial property owners, etc., who are interested in installing solar and having it interconnected behind their meter to get credit on their electric bill. An important term to think about here is net energy metering, which is also defined in this definition section, which is the way that you can install solar on your property and both consume that electricity in real time and get credit from your electric utility for the electricity that you export to the grid. Also, definition here of solar energy system, which includes basically all of the equipment necessary to produce solar energy on your property. I do want to also note there is an exemption in the bill. I guess I'll go to the next slide and then I'll talk about the exemption, which is for license requirements. In the Solar Consumer Protections Bill, we have restated a section of statute, which is 19-28041, which essentially requires that any individual working on electricity, so wires that convey electrical current, needs to have an electrical contractor license. So we're not changing, this bill does not change that underlying statute, but it clarifies that that statute does apply to solar energy installations because of course solar energy installations are conveying electrical current. So that section of statute says any entity advertising, offering to do work, submitting a bid, engaging in, conducting, or carrying on the business of installing, repairing, replacing, or maintaining residential or commercial solar energy systems must be a licensed electrician. So the change there is that it's the residential or commercial solar energy systems, clarifying that, of course, those are systems, installations that convey electrical current. If you have any questions about what license requirements are required, I definitely, if you are someone who works in the solar energy industry, I would definitely refer you to the Department of Labor and Industries to ask any questions you have. They've been wonderful partners in this work and are very happy to answer any questions, because there are certainly a lot of nuances of what type of contract is required for what instance. So I won't be able to answer those questions today, but would definitely refer you to the Department of Labor and Industries. Another important license requirement that was established in the bill, that any entity designing residential or commercial solar energy systems must be a licensed electrician or a licensed architect, engineer, or land surveyor, and be practicing in their field of specific training and qualifications. So that's applying to individuals who are designing residential or commercial solar energy systems. So you'll see throughout these slides, I wanted to provide some information of what you can do. This is really designed for property owners who are interested in installing solar on their property. One thing that would be important for you to do if you're considering solar is check your contractor, check that your contractor is a licensed electrician on the Department of Labor and Industries website. There's a link here to do that. You should make sure that the business license is valid through the proposed installation date for your solar energy system. So that person, that firm, etc., will be licensed until the work is done on your property. And you can also use that website to verify whether there are any citations against the company, whether they've run into any issues. Maybe those issues have been resolved at this point in time, but it just gives you some more background information on that contractor and what the status of their license is. So section 3, we're moving now into the main section of the bill, which is the contract requirements. I want to note here on the slide is a picture of the bill sponsor, Christine Reeves, who was a wonderful partner on this bill, a real advocate for solar consumer protections. I was very grateful to get to work with her and all of her leadership on this effort. In terms of the contract requirements, on this slide, I'm showing the sections that are really about the costs of the contract and what must be stated. So what the bill is saying in section 3 are, these are things that must be stated in every solar energy installation contract. So these bullets you'll see are required in the bill to now be included in any solar energy installation contract. I will note many, if not most, installers in the state were already providing this information, but this provides some standardization. So it's now required that every installation contract is in writing, is in the language that was used for the sales pitch that was provided to the homeowner, and it must include an itemized list of work to be performed. So what will be done to complete the solar energy installation, identification of any financing that's included in the contract, disclosure of any dealer fee. This is defined in the definition section, but it's an amount paid by a solar energy contractor or salesperson to a lender in order to offer a customer credit to finance the solar energy system. The reason dealer fees might be of interest to customers is they are an amount that really doesn't have anything to do with your installation contract. It doesn't change your installation, but it's sort of an inducement for financing. So it's something that could possibly increase the contract cost and just something to be aware of. The contract also needs to include the total dollar amount. What's the cost of the solar energy installation? A cost per watt of the system, which is essentially how big is the system, and then you're taking the size of the system, you're taking the total dollar price of the contract and dividing it by the size of the system. So it enables you to make a apples to apples comparison across contracts. And then finally, a detailed payment schedule that explains when payments are due and identifies the cancellation fees due at each milestone. So if you enter into a contract, I'll talk about rescission rights in a moment here, but if you enter into a contract, the work gets started. This enables you to understand when are the various payments due, and if you were to later on in the process decide to stop that contract, something came up, you suddenly needed to get out of that contract, what would be the fees that you would owe? So just information for the customer. I'd highly recommend my colleague, fellow board member Deborah Hafner-Ratliff did a couple webinars for Solar Washington on what to know when you're thinking about going solar. I'd really recommend looking into those presentations if you're considering solar on your home and business. There's some helpful background information. I know that one thing Deborah covered in more detail was getting 3 bids. Make sure, any sort of home improvement or property improvement you're doing, it's always good to get 3 bids to just compare your options. I already talked about dealer fees. Price per watt, again, enables you to compare what you would pay for the same size solar energy system across various project bids. And I do just want to emphasize the lowest price per watt or the lowest total contract price may not always be the best fit. It really matters what the services that are being offered and the quality of the contractor's work. So it's one of many factors you should definitely consider in a solar energy installation. Continuing here with section 3 of the contract, section 3 of the bill, which is more contract requirements. Here I wanted to talk about equipment. I have on this slide Bill Will, who is the policy person at the Washington Solar Energy Industries Association. He's here testifying on the bill, and was really grateful to work with Bill Will and others at WASIA board members to really finesse the bill language, get the bill language right. And ultimately they were strong supporters on this bill. So really glad to partner with them. And they had a lot of expertise, not surprisingly, on equipment requirements. So really grateful for their insights here. The contracts, any solar energy installation contract now needs to state the model and brand name of major system components to be installed. So what equipment will be installed in your property, disclosure of the manufacturer's warranty period for major system components. That's important because if something goes wrong with one of those pieces of equipment and it's under warranty, you could get that replaced for free. So important to understand that. Identifying any ongoing operation and maintenance costs that are included in the contract, as well as a list of anticipated maintenance activities. So certainly maybe not all the maintenance that might need to be done. Certainly some things couldn't be known at the time of your contract, but certain things would be known, such as typically inverters last roughly 15 years, give or take. I would definitely talk to your installer about what the lifetime of your inverter is. But typically after about 15 years, the inverter on the system will need to be replaced for that system to continue to operate at the same level or close to the same level of performance. And so it's just helpful to know what are those costs going to be so that you can make an informed decision up front and make sure you're ready for that investment when the time comes. The contract also needs to disclose and state a projection. This is a best estimate, good faith estimate of the electricity that could be expected to be produced by the system for the first 12 months. So this is certainly not a guarantee. It's not a performance guarantee, but it's the solar installer's estimate of what might you see in terms of production from your solar energy system. We know that solar produces generally a lot more electricity in the summer months compared to the winter months, since we're up here in the northern latitudes. And so it gives you a sense of, you might see a much more reduced electric bill in the summer compared to in the winter. The state's net energy metering law does enable you to carry over credits on your electric bill, but there is an annual true up in March of every year for utilities who are still on, the most utilities in the state are still on the net metering law that is required. There are only 2 utilities that have diverged from the original net metering statute, which means that every year in March, those credits are going to be trued up. Basically, you won't be able to carry over credits. So that gives you an estimate of what would you save each month, and would there be any credits that might expire in March each year. And then importantly, all of that information is used again for a good faith estimate from the installer of the projected electric bill savings over the first 12 months that system is online. So again, not a performance guarantee here. It's a good faith estimate. So the installer needs to do their due diligence, use the projected electricity output, use your utility's current electric rate, and give you as the property owner an understanding of what might you save on your electric bill, which is helpful to compare when you're thinking about making an investment in solar. You're going to typically, if you have a loan, you might be paying out over time. If you're paying upfront, you're going to have kind of a larger upfront cost, and this helps you understand what might you save during that first year. So just to help you make that comparison. What you can do, I've talked about this already, but understand the maintenance that you'll need to do, plan for potential future costs, and understand how much you might be able to save on your electric bill with solar. Continue on with section 3 of the bill. These are contract requirements related to notices. I want to note The photo here is Senator Stanford, who was the sponsor of the companion bill, which was Senate Bill 6256. Ultimately, this is an identical bill that moved through the legislature in the Senate side. That bill didn't pass because ultimately the House bill became the vehicle, but really grateful to Senator Stanford for all his leadership on the bill, all his collaboration on the bill, and really generating support so that it could ultimately, the House bill could pass in the Senate as well. In terms of notice requirements, these are all items that are now required in every solar energy installation contract. There's a notice required that if a customer plans to obtain a loan to finance the solar energy installation, it's recommended that they wait for financial approval and verify whether the loan payments are due before the system is operational. The thinking behind that is you might not want to sign a contract until you're sure that your financing is in place, and then make sure you understand when are those loan payments when are those loan payments going to be due. For example, are there loan payments that are due before that installation is fully connected, in which case you might be paying for the solar energy system before you're seeing savings on your electric bill. So just some things to consider. A rescissions right notice is required. And what this means is that every customer has the ability, the right to cancel a contract, really for anything, but here we're talking specifically about solar energy installations. You have a right to cancel your contract within 3 business days of signing it. And so if you sign a contract, you take another day and I don't know, you find out new information or something changes in your financial situation, you have 3 business days to cancel that contract without any cost to you. You do need to email or mail a certified letter to the entity listed in your contract in order to be guaranteed that rescission rights where you wouldn't pay anything up front. One of the reasons this is important is I think one of the sales tactics that we had seen that was concerning to commerce was kind of aggressive sales tactics, misleading statements about, your electric rate is about to increase, you need to install this now. Certainly, some of that can be valid, but sometimes there's kind of a urgency in those solar sales tactics. You need to act now or you're going to miss this opportunity. And so that rescission rights can be important. If you feel like you are having a solar energy salesperson who is really expressing urgency, recommend you reach out to your electric utility to find out is the program that they might be offering going away. Just get some more information, just to get more information and verify whether that's true. The contract also needs to include a statement that explains whether the cost to uninstall and reinstall the system is included in the case of future roof repair or replacement. Again, I would refer you to Deborah Hafner-Ratliff's presentation that I think Chantal put in the chat. It's typically important when you're thinking about installing solar on your home or business. If it's going on your roof, make sure that you have a good roof that's able to support that system. Your installer will typically talk to you about that and make sure, if you're planning to replace your roof in the next 6 months, might be better to wait to replace your roof and then install solar, because of course to replace your roof you'd need to uninstall the solar and reinstall it. So just understanding what the costs are if for some reason you need to repair or replace your roof in the future. And finally on this slide, the customer needs to initial a notice that essentially they have read a statement that says they must have sufficient tax liability to utilize the residential clean energy tax credit, and that the cost of roof repairs should not be included in calculating the tax credit. And importantly, the bill requires that invoices for roofing work must be included separately. I'm really appreciative of Wasia bringing this issue up. Essentially, customers who are installing solar on their home or business are typically eligible to take 30% of the cost of the system as a tax credit, but you certainly need to have tax liability to utilize that tax credit. And so it's just important if you're on a fixed income, you might not have sufficient tax liability to utilize that tax credit. So important to talk to your financial advisor or a lawyer and just make sure you understand what the opportunity is for you to potentially save money through a tax credit. And then importantly, understanding that roof repair is not eligible. If you are both having solar installed and having your roof replaced potentially by the same contractor, those roof repair costs are not eligible for that tax credit. Only the solar cost, the solar energy installation cost is. So it's really important to understand what tax credit you might be able to obtain. So I think I've gone through all of these in terms of what you can do if you're a property owner considering solar. Make sure you understand the full investment decision, confirm you can utilize tax credit, and consider when your roof might need to be replaced. Still in section 3 of this bill, it's the most meaty section of the bill, contract requirements related to interconnection. So the bill requires or establishes that it's the solar energy contractor's responsibility to install the system in compliance with all codes and standards. So for example, the National Electric Code, building codes, etc. That is something that the solar energy contractor will take care of and will make sure that they're in compliance. The contract also needs to include a copy of, so a physical copy of, or the web address for the applicable electric utilities interconnection application. And the contract must disclose which party is responsible for obtaining permission to operate. So essentially, once you install solar on your home or business on your property, there is a step that's necessary to interconnect that system to the utility, which is then the utility will give permission to operate. So essentially, that system can be energized, electricity can be sent onto the grid. And really importantly here, the fourth bullet on this slide is the contracts, solar energy contracts now are required for any solar energy installation. The interconnection application from the utility must be approved by that utility before the solar energy installation can be installed. So what this means is when you sign a solar energy installation contract, one of the first steps will be that your solar energy contractor, design professional, designs the solar energy system and then fills out a interconnection application with the utility saying, here's what the system looks like, here's the size, here's the equipment we're going to use. And then the utility will look at that interconnection application and make sure that it's designed in a way that it can be safely interconnected to the grid. So that's the first step in the process for the utility to say, yes, looks good, this system can interconnect to our grid. Then the solar energy contractor will go install the system, and then there's a check at the end to make sure that everything's been installed properly before it can be interconnected to the grid. A lot more details there that I'd be happy to talk through, or you could reach out to a solar energy contractor or your electric utility. But this really importantly requires that that interconnection application has to be approved before the solar energy installation can be installed, before construction can start. And the reason that's important is because we have seen, unfortunately, a few examples, not many, but a few examples where the system is designed in such a way where it just can't be safely interconnected to the electric grid. And so there has been instances where a utility company gets a interconnection application and says this system is not, designed right. This isn't safe to interconnect to our system. And unfortunately, that system's already been built. And so the worst case scenario is there's been contractors who have just disappeared, and then the customer is left with a solar energy system on their roof that isn't working. So that's why it's really important that that interconnection application is approved before the construction starts. Again, that is a very small minority of situations that have occurred, but we really want to make sure everything is being checked along the way so that everything can go forward smoothly. I have an example here on this slide, which I think will be helpful maybe more for folks in the solar energy industry, but this is an example from Puget Sound Energy, so just one of our utilities. They use a system called Power Clerk, and so the customer will receive a notice when the interconnection application has been approved. So you can see this is just an example from PSE. You can see the customer's address. This is a made-up address, but has been granted approval to construct. It provides information on the system. It specifies whether there's a battery included, whether there's a production meter, and then it goes through the steps for the interconnection process. So application is submitted, PSE reviewed, and then step 2, your interconnection application has been approved. You've been granted approval to construct. So then it says you're here and you can proceed with your installation. There's several steps afterwards to inspect that system and then get it turned on so that you can start saving money on your electric bill. There is language in the bill that provides an opportunity for utilities if they wish to. This is totally voluntary. Utilities can create a list of installers that they've worked with, that they know their work, and they can say, these are the installers that we have reviewed, and these installers can start construction before that interconnection application is approved. Again, that's completely voluntary, utility by utility. To my knowledge, no utility has opted to use that mechanism thus far, and so it's safest to assume that you will need the interconnection application to be approved before the construction starts. Okay, I think this is maybe my last slide on section 3 of the bill, contract requirements, other considerations. It's important to know that solar energy can affect property taxes. It could possibly increase your property taxes if you have solar energy installed on your property, increasing the value of your asset, of your home, of your property. So a statement about just the fact that that is a possibility is required in the contract. An explanation of what happens to the solar energy system when there is a power outage. So if you install solar at your property and there is a battery energy storage system, or it's interconnected in such a way, it may be able to provide power during an outage. Many solar energy systems are connected in such a way that they will not be able to provide power when there is an outage. So it's just important to know whether or not your solar energy system will continue to operate, will continue to provide you electricity when there is a power outage. So the solar energy contract is required to state whether or not your system will provide you power. Essentially, there won't be any statement if it is going to provide you power during an outage, but if your system won't provide power during an outage, then there will be a statement to that effect. And finally, it's important to know that no payments of any type may be charged by a solar energy salesperson or a solar energy contractor before a customer's rescission rights have expired. So just know that you shouldn't be paying anything out of pocket until your contract is signed, has been signed by you and by the solar energy contractor, and 3 business days have transpired. At that point in time, you'll follow the payment schedule that's in the contract, but before that time, you shouldn't be asked to pay anything. And if you are being asked to pay something, I'd recommend reaching out to the Consumer Protection Division in the Attorney General's office and asking them some questions about that. So again, what you can do, ensure you understand how the installation could affect your property taxes, understand what will happen during an outage, and make sure you're not asked to pay anything until 3 days after your contract has been signed. Section 4. Section 4 of this bill is a very short one. It is about soliciting. So it's really about solar sales tactics. And so the statement in the bill says, no person may solicit using any statements or representations with regards to the cost, financing, terms, or conditions of purchase or installation of residential or commercial solar energy systems that is deceptive. So I've put a couple advertisements that I've seen here. No cost solar program. There's currently no cost solar program in Washington State. We are hoping to be able to provide no cost solar energy installations through Solar for All. That program has not yet launched. And how to get free solar panels, Washington. Solar panels are not free. I haven't heard of any program in the state that provides perfectly free solar panels. So importantly, what you can do. Know that unless you're participating in a government program, such as Solar for All, which is not yet live, there will always be a cost or a financial commitment to install solar on your property. So there are opportunities for you to use loan products where there may be a delayed payment, but there is no program in the state that provides at this point in time 100% free solar energy power to your home. And I should say a solar energy installation on your house. If you are in a utility service territory where they have a community solar program and you are an income qualified homeowner or income qualified individual household, etc., that may be possible that there could be a no cost opportunity for you. But again, if you're installing solar on your property, there's currently no zero cost program in the state. Also, you should be aware that nothing in a solar energy installation contract alters your responsibility to pay your electric utility company for amounts due on your electric bill. That's a statement in the law, just clarifying that in almost all circumstances, you won't leave your utility company with solar. You can certainly generate your own power, but unless you're in an off-grid situation where you're not connected to the electric grid, where you're in a remote location, your utility company will continue to provide you power, will continue to provide you electricity at night when the sun isn't shining, etc. So because you install solar on your property, there is no ability to not pay your electric bill. You'll still owe amounts due on your electric bill, but you should see a reduced electric bill. Finally, Section 5 of the bill is about linkage to the Consumer Protection Act, which is an existing law in Washington state. This section of the bill says that the legislature finds that the practices covered by this chapter are matters vitally affecting the public interest for the purpose of applying the Consumer Protection Act. A violation of this chapter is not reasonable, and it's an unfair and deceptive act in trade or commerce. So what this means is it means that all the language in the bill, if someone were to violate the language in the bill, that would be a violation of the Consumer Protection Act. What this does is it enables the Washington State Attorney General's office to file claims under the Consumer Protection Act. I'm not going to speak for the Consumer Protection Division, but my understanding is this is typically an investigation. And so it might lead to a lawsuit, but they will do a lot of due diligence and look into issues that have come before them. But importantly, there is information on this page. If you are a property owner who is installing solar and you have questions or you have concerns, you can always reach out to the Consumer Resource Center of the Attorney General's office for more information. I will also note it's not in Section 5 of the bill, but it's in Section 3 of the bill. There's also an opportunity for property owners to bring their own case, their own lawsuit. So the Consumer Protection Act is a separate opportunity for the Attorney General office to enforce this bill. It also creates a right of action for property owners themselves. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions. Unfortunately, I won't be able to answer all questions probably in the time we have, and some things will be outside my area of expertise, but happy to try to provide any clarification I can. Thanks,
Thank you
Chantal.
so much, Nora. This was so full of information. Probably the first question that we get was whether this is being recorded and whether we'll be able to share a copy of this. And yes, it is. It was recorded, and you will receive. I think it's within 24 hours of this webinar. You will receive a thank you for attending, or sorry you missed the webinar if you were registered. That will include a link to the recording of this webinar. So you'll be able to go over some of the sections again, since again, so much information that may make it difficult to absorb all of it at one time. So, but thank you, Nora. I think you may have answered that question in your last section, but there was a couple of questions to make sure that we understood which state agency was tasked with enforcing consumer protection. I think you answered that, but it's worth repeating for everyone to be clear about that.
Yeah, thanks, Chantal. So there are two enforcement actions that could be taken. A property owner, if they felt like their contract wasn't in compliance with the law, or they felt like there was some other issue with their solar energy installation, they could always file a lawsuit, bring a claim before the court system, and go that avenue. There is also, because this law is now a violation of the Consumer Protection Act, which is Section 1986 of our Washington State statutes, the Consumer Protection Division of the Attorney General's office is also able to more easily bring an action before the court system to say, we're seeing this problematic practice. I think generally they will collect information, so it may not be on a one-by-one basis, but they will explore and try to do investigative work to find out if there are issues that if they feel like they're worth pursuing. So definitely refer you all to the Attorney General's office for any questions about the Consumer Protection Act. They are the ones who enforce the Consumer Protection Act.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, and keeping in mind the disclaimers you made, can you answer the questions whether tax credits can be spread over more than 1 year?
I am not going to venture to try to address that question. I would recommend people reach out to their financial advisor, reach out to an attorney. You can also have that conversation with your installer to find more information. I was going to recommend the Department of Revenue, but generally those the tax credits that we have are federal tax credits, so that would be the U.S. IRS, and I'm certainly not going to speak for them. There are incentives in the state related to related to sales tax for solar energy systems, but I think that question was really about the IRS's federal income tax. So I'm not gonna venture to answer that question here.
Okay. Another question that may fall into that same category, but what happens if homeowners can install their own, and I assume that's related to your section on electrical consideration. What happens if a homeowner wants to install their own system?
Yeah, so I think I heard two questions there. What if someone can't install solar on their home, and what if they want to install solar on their home? So I'm gonna take the opportunity to answer both of those. If you can't install solar on your home, or you don't own your own home, there are other opportunities for you to participate in clean energy. I definitely recommend contacting your electric utility to find out what opportunities they might have available. For example, Puget Sound Energy, which is one of the big electric utilities, at least here in Western Washington, does have a community solar program that people can elect to participate in. There are other opportunities through various utilities to participate in green tariffs. Essentially, typically you'll pay a little bit more to have 100% renewable energy provided to you, or at least you get credit for 100% renewable energy. I think the second question was about what if you want to install solar on your own home. I would defer people to the Department of Labor and Industries for additional questions on this, but there is an exemption in existing statute that says you can, and I would defer people who are interested in doing electrical work on their own property to look at this section of statute, which is in 1928-041, I believe, about electrical contractor requirements. If you're doing electrical work on your own property, so the property you own, you typically do not need to have an electrical contractor's license because you're doing that work on your own property. But I certainly would just advise everyone to ensure they know what they're doing when they do that work. Make sure they have the proper training to do so. But again, if you are doing electrical work on your own property, there is language in statute that essentially says you don't need to be a licensed electrical contractor. But again, that's only on your own property that you own.
Okay, so thank you for that answer. A lender asks us what happens if a contract was signed before June 6th? Do they need to assure they comply with the House bill?
That's a great question. I would caution everyone, I am not a lawyer. I'm not here to give legal advice. So the first thing I would say is talk to a lawyer, check this with a lawyer. My understanding is the law went into effect June 6th, so it would apply to actions taken after June 6th of 2024. But that's my understanding, and I would definitely recommend double checking with a lawyer.
Thank you. And I think you may have mentioned that, but do you know if the 3 days before any payment is business days or not?
Good question. So the 3-day rescission rights is 3 business days. So Monday to Friday, excluding holidays, I believe is how that's defined. And so 3 business days. You have 3 business days to decide to cancel your contract, which needs to be done again in writing via email or certified mail. And that 3 days rescission rights, 3 business days means you shouldn't be charged anything, any amount of payment before those rescission rights have elapsed. So before those 3 business days have passed, you shouldn't be asked to pay anything.
Thank you, and thank you for the question as well. You mentioned a certified letter, and again, that may go beyond what we would expect you to know, but what is considered a certified letter?
A little bit outside my area of expertise, but you can go to the U.S. Post Office and ask them for a certified letter. It's basically a process that enables that letter to be tracked and guarantees that it was sent on the date that it says it was sent. The other option is an email. So basically, there needs to be some way to track that cancellation was sent when you said it was sent.
Okay, I will read this verbatim because so you get the whole context of it. The part referring to contract requirements. There is a part about system maintenance and they're needing to be aligned, addressing what is covered and what is not. For the estimated system cost that the customer may need to pay out of pocket, does that need to be its own section, i.e. the inverter replacement at 15 years, etc.?
Good question. I think I understand this question. I think the question is saying, is the total contract cost different than the maintenance cost? And so the way this should work is there's a total contract price. So everything that is included in that contract, labor, materials, essentially how much is it going to cost to install that solar energy system on your home? If that contract also includes some maintenance, let's say, this is a made up example, but let's say the solar energy installer says, we're going to come to your home, 2 years from now and clean your panels from you. That should be included in the system cost because that is part of your the total contract cost. So if the installer is saying, or the contract says, we're going to do this for you and you owe us this amount for it, that should be included in the total contract cost. However, there's also a section of the bill that says these are the things that you need to do as a property owner to maintain the optimal performance of your system. And that could include an inverter replacement. If that inverter replacement, typically inverter replacements aren't included in the cost of the contract. There may be some that include them, but typically that's not included. So if it's not included in the contract, it wouldn't be part of the total contract cost because it's not part of the contract.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for that question as well. Are there blank contracts examples that can be found somewhere? Do you know if somebody's working on providing templates for those contracts?
That's a great question. I do not think that there is anyone working on that. Typically, each solar energy contractor installer has their own contracts that they use. So if you use ABC contractor, it's going to look different than DEF contractors' contract requirements. So each solar energy installation company is able to write their own contract, draft the language that they want to include in their contract, run it by their lawyers, etc., do all the due diligence that they feel is necessary. So every solar energy contract tends to look a little bit different. If you're an installer curious about how to write a solar energy installation contract that complies with this law, I would definitely refer you to WASIA, the Washington Solar Energy Industry Association. They have, a large group of installers who are members of WASIA, and I think they would be able to help provide some helpful information on that front. But as far as I'm aware, there aren't any templates that exist.
Okay. And final question, we have to give you a break here, is have you received any guidance on whether a contractor entering into a solar contract with a customer needs to be an electrical contractor? And that
Interesting
question may
question.
still be there for the decision to be made on it, right?
Yeah, I would reach out to the Department of Labor and Industries on that question. Again, the existing statute is pretty clear that anyone entering into a contract doing electrical work needs to be an electrical contractor. But I would definitely refer that question to the Department of Labor and Industries. If you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to provide you a contact at the Department of Labor and Industries that you can ask questions of them. Commerce does not do any licensing related to electrical contractors, and so would definitely refer you to L&I Labor and Industries to get the right answer to that question.
Great, thank you. And thank you for your patience in answering all those questions, Nora. One thing to mention is that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that the Solar Summit will be October 4th at Shoreline Community College. We have a great lineup of presentations already planned for it. One of those presentations is being organized by Nora and will be a more in-depth look at the Solar Consumer Protection Act with different speakers presenting different views on the topic. So if this is something that is really close to your heart, close to you business, do plan on attending the solar summits in October. The information is on the website solarwa.org. You can click on 2024 Solar Summit and register there. And we hope to see all of you at that event. But let me thank Nora for the time it took her to put this presentation together and to deliver it, for all the research and all the work she has done on this topic. And thank you all of you for attending and wishing you a very good rest of the week. So with this, we're going to close the webinar. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chantal. Thanks everyone for being here.